a pick and roll with it. Make a pick and roll with it. Betting weekly. Fast break. From coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown.
Hey folks, happy Monday and welcome in to another live edition of Betting Weekly Fast Break. I'm Sara Civian, joined by professional handicapper Doug Kezirian. Thanks for starting your week with us. We've got a ton to talk about today as another fantastic weekend of WNBA hoops is behind us and the final stretch of regular season play lies ahead. It's been a while, Doug. How's August treating you?
It's going well. 3 weeks to go in the regular season, as you alluded to. It's crunch time, to say the least. We have some teams that we thought would be championship contenders fighting for playoff lives. It's really gotten competitive at the bottom of the conference, and then football starting up as well. Not quite ready for that, although it's already here. But no, it's alive and well as the WNBA. Really enjoying it, and it's been a good run so far. So we're going to continue to stay hot with 2 games tonight.
Yeah, the football's always funny. When they're in Ireland, I'm like, all right, I was not prepared for this mentally, but we will do it. And we have done it. So at least that helps ease us in. And we'll get Bill Belichick there this weekend, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take a while to get used to saying North Carolina head coach Bill Belichick, and we know about some of the hoopla off the field for him, but really just the fact that he's in the college game, working with younger people. He was all business all the time. So is he going to appeal to this younger generation and all these things? And everyone's going to be coming after him, right? UNC is going to have a bullseye on its back, getting everyone's best shot. Starts with the opener, TCU. The money's moved to the Horned Frogs, but it's certainly going to make it more intriguing. And we have definitely new sort of intrigue with the expanded playoff. This is year 2, obviously. So football is the best. I love college more than the NFL a little bit. The NFL can be kind of monotonous and predictable to a certain extent. Not as much turnover, not as much craziness and variance, but all of it's here in a matter of days. And I couldn't be more fired up. But there are opportunities in the WNBA. And yes, they're going to go head to head with some NFL games during the playoffs and things like that. But I tell you, we've said it time and time again, all tickets cash the same.
100%. And our fast break squad stayed red hot last week after a 2-0 week from yours truly and Doug and Albert carrying us into the weekend with a very decisive big unit winner. So let's start out with that winner on Friday. The Seattle Storm finally seemed to be moving past their post-trade deadline slump with 2 big wins to put them at the top of the playoff bubble teams. And Friday's 95-60 win over the Wings was huge. You were very confident that the Storm would cover that -8 spread, and apparently so were they. So what made you decide this was the time to buy into the Storm, turning the tide?
Yeah, they won by 35. I think the key here with the W being a little bit, I don't know, easier to handicap, at least for me, is sort of singling out the reason for results. A lot of times you create narratives as a sports bettor, recreational bettor, and a sports fan as why something happened. And if you can find sort of the contrarian angle or a fly in the ointment with some of that logic, you can pounce. So the previous game for the Wings, Paige Beckers goes for 44. Fantastic performance, 17 of 21 from the field, just remarkable. But that was really more the Sparks' terrible defense than anything. I mean, she was on fire, but you can do other things to prevent her from getting even shots off, right? It's not like she's a bad player or anything silly like that. But there's just things you can do when her entire supporting cast is limited. And that's what the Wings are right now. They don't have Arike Gumbawale. They don't have Yuru. And so the Storm just have Gabby Williams. They have all this length and defense. So it was a really favorable spot. And it was a revenge spot, having lost to them by 24, where the Storm did to this wing squad when Arike went off and everything. So I just thought the Wings were a bad team still. And that 44-point performance from Paige didn't really change a thing. And you got to be able to handle success. And that was a really good game for Dallas. They were feeling themselves. Paige was on a roll. So I didn't think they would prepare the right way. And they got also lost yesterday at home to the Valkyries, who literally were like double teaming Paige from the start. Now, Valkyries played out of their mind, made all 18 free throws. shot 42% from three, and it still was a relatively tight game at half. So this Wings team is not putrid, but they're a bet against, but there might be some times to bet on them. So you got to be careful. So sometimes it's just the stars align. And on Friday, the stars aligned for Seattle for sure. And I didn't think they'd win by 35. I just thought they'd cover the 8 and win by double digits. But it's nice to have a rocking chair win.
100%. And you kind of look at the trend with the Storm, their recent losing habits. It's been close games. They just kind of can't seem out to close out these close games. So when you look at the Wings context heading into this game, all right, this might not be a close game, meaning the Storm could be able to close it out, right?
Well, yeah, I mean they're in desperation mode, right?
Mhm.
They're fighting for their playoff lives. Dallas does have its own pick this year in the lottery, so they're not exactly incentivized to win. And whereas the Sun and Sky do not have their picks, right? They're part of trade packages from previous years. And so they won't be tanking, so to speak. And it's not so much the player. I mean, the players never tank in any sport, but if a franchise is not going to make the playoffs and they are incentivized to lose, they may not rush, in this case, Enrique back. So you got to be careful with some of these. And Paige is going to have growing pains. I said it all year. I mean, she's going to be a great player. She already is a very good player. She's an all-star. But there's going to be ups and downs as she adjusts to the travel, the being the focal point of an opposing team's defense. And that's not the focal point of a Big East or American Conference's opposing defense. It's the focal point of a good WNBA defense like the Storm. And that's the difference. So she'll find her spots. She's unselfish by nature. So you can get the slightest double team will get the ball out of her hands, or she might just need to play through that, which she was doing against the Sparks, but LA has a bad defense. So it was all just about the Storm. Now, I'm not surprised the Storm didn't cover yesterday because I don't think they're that great. Um, on the screen, it was plus 950 to miss the playoffs. It's not that far fetched of an idea. They have a somewhat tough schedule coming up. I don't really believe in them. I mean, remember, this is a team that's lost at home to the Sun, lost by 24 to the Wings as well. I'm not exactly in a rush to bet on Seattle in most cases. Couple tough games coming up. They're at Indy, at Minnesota. The Lynx are at full strength now. Still have to lock up the 1 seed, so I think they'll give it a go. I'm not convinced the Storm can beat the Sparks at home because they've had trouble with LA. And then they wrap up the year with New York and Golden State. And this Valkyries team's obviously fighting for its life and playing hard. So I'm not in a rush at all to bet on the Storm right now, except for a really unique situation, which last Friday was.
Right, 100%. And that just shows kind of the context that goes into betting on games. That's so much more than kind of, is this team theoretically better than the other one? What's going on with either of their records right now? What's going on with their playoff context and situation? I feel like the Storm are really missing Jewell Loyd when it comes to these clutch moments, closing out games. You're right. They have the Fever, Lynx, Sky, Sparks, Liberty, and Valkyries up next for the rest of their season. And that's just all kinds of different teams, and you don't know. The Storm's a pretty unstable team to me right now. They miss Jewell Loyd, and I think, yeah, I love what you guys did headed into the weekend, kept us hot. But yeah, I might stay away from the Storm for a bit here because there are just easier things to bet on in my eyes coming up.
I mean, I might just bet against them, right? If they're going to be laying some serious points like yesterday, sizable spread on the road, that's just too many. So I'll be looking to bet against them soon. I mean, I don't love the Fever right now, but that could be an opportunity. I think they get boat raced in Minnesota. I just don't think you mentioned how they missed Jewell Loyd. They missed something. Now, Sykes has been what I thought was a great addition. They needed more ball handling, playmaking, and shooting. They just didn't have the key shooter at the end of games, to your point about missing Jewell Loyd. Now, her defense left a lot to be desired, and that's probably why they traded her. And her field goal percentage was downright awful the last couple seasons in Seattle. But they do miss that go-to. I mean, they went to NECA for the game winner yesterday, and she's obviously a future Hall of Famer. But they need someone at the perimeter, and that's why I think Sykes was so good, because Erica Wheeler was not, and Skylar Diggins is a little too methodical for my liking. They have the pieces to make a run, and they can do some damage in the playoffs, and I was certainly bullish on them coming into the year. But I'm just starting to wonder a little bit about them just from that offensive execution standpoint. And Ryan Huffman agrees, like he loves it. Storm are really unpredictable. And therefore, I think there's going to be opportunities to bet against them really with the point spread, like when they're big favorites.
Yeah, we'll have you covered with all of that as the weeks wind down here in the regular season and the playoffs come up. But I want to touch on the Aces before we get to their game tonight because they're in your neck of the wood. They are 10 straight wins, most recently a Saturday night 10-point win over the Mystics and a great defense against the Mercury on Thursday. Doug, I know we both love how the Mercury play, and they've been pretty great recently. So to me, it was impressive that the Aces held them to season lows with 61 total points and a 31% field goal percentage.
Yeah, no, they've been just to bring it every night. We talk so much about situational handicapping and flat spots, teams off big wins, but to rip off 10 straight wins and 8-2 ATS during this run really speaks volumes to just everything that's going right with this team. The second unit is fantastic. On this very program, I've discussed why it does not make sense to bet on the Aces first half when you can bet on them first quarter because Asia Wilson plays the entire first quarter, then sits the first 5 minutes or so of the second quarter. So why not just isolate more Asia Wilson for that first quarter? But the problem with that logic that I was, giving out was that this Aces second unit at the beginning have been crushing, steamrolling, trucking opponents in the second quarter, just their plus minus and their net rating. And that second unit with Dana Evans at the point, and then Jewel Lloyd sort of they stagger the minutes. So she starts the second quarter when Asia goes to the bench, and Chelsea Gray with her, and then Dana Evans will also swap off. So they run through them, and then some of the other role players, and it lets Jewel cook, and they also play good defense, and they're just so much better than another team's second unit. So actually, second quarter splits have been really good during this 10-game win streak, which doesn't make a lot of sense because Asia Wilson starts the second quarter on the bench. Sometimes she comes in a little earlier, but this all started from that 50-point loss to the Lynx at home. And it was almost like a players only meeting in the locker room where Asia Wilson said, if you think this loss is acceptable, do not come back to work tomorrow. We don't want you. And then they started 10 straight wins. So to your point, impressive performance against Phoenix, off big wins. I know a lot of sharp money. Wes Reynolds as well was on the +2. Market moved to 1. And every time I looked at the screen, I say this all the time. Every time I look up, Alyssa Thomas is complaining to the referees, and she's whining for someone who comes, carries herself in such a tough way, and she does, and she's a, great player. But this team does not handle adversity that well, whereas the Aces push through it, and that's my concern with the Mercury futures ticket I have in the back pocket.
You're right. And it's so interesting because I talk a lot about Wilson's body language on the bench and how that kind of spurred this 10-game win streak when it comes to like she is very upset with her team visibly, but she doesn't act like that when she's on the court, right? It's kind of all business on the court. And then I guess you kind of see her reacting to missed shots and stuff. And you're right. I think there was, especially with Becky Hammond too, she was alluding to some of the locker room talk that kind of turned this philosophy for the Aces around. And this is kind of what they do, right? Like they have bad starts to seasons and then they just kind of they have that depth and defense to maybe pick it up. And they're always pretty close when it comes to games against really good opponents. So that's kind of a telltale thing that, all right, they're going to end up picking it up. But like you said about the maybe counterintuitive betting on the second unit. It's the odds makers catch up to kind of what's happening with Wilson too on the bench. So that's where you get your best value when it comes to, all right, if they're pulling off these great games right now, that's kind of, you want to do that where they know Wilson's, she's been juiced, right? Where like they understand this is like the most consistent player in the league.
Yeah, but so, I mean, look, she's playing half the quarter, right? So it's not like completely with her off the court, but this is really coaching 101 and what Becky Hammond's done. Her starting lineup with Jewel Lloyd and everything just wasn't working. It wasn't executed. She needed more rebounding. Excuse me. So they traded for Nilissa Smith, gave up a first-round pick for Nilissa Smith, put her in the lineup, and then they switched things around, put Lloyd to the bench, put Kirsten Bell, who was really only at the end of the bench in mop-up duty, in the starting lineup. But she brings up energy, toughness, some rebounding, and she can hit an open three. And it was just about fit, the right puzzle pieces around Asia Wilson, still running the offense through Chelsea Gray, at least to get the ball up court. Jackie Young is more deferential for her skill set. She's so good, but she does defer. But it was just there were too many mouths to feed from a starting lineup standpoint. So she channeled what the Spurs did back in the day with Ginobili, moving him to the sixth man, and you can finish with Jewel Lloyd at the end of the game. That doesn't mean you have to play all the starters together, and you stagger starter minutes. And this is what Billy Donovan had a hard time understanding when he became the coach of the Thunder. He was clueless on he at times he had both Durant and Westbrook off the court at the same time. And then he finally succumbed to the NBA way of things where you stagger them. You always have at least one of them on the court. So there's just a way to kind of massage a lineup and complement one another. We all know with friend groups or whatever, we all have certain chemistry when one person's out or one person's in. So I just love what they did. She wasn't headstrong. She played the best hand with the card she's been dealt and adjusted to injuries because Asia missed some time with concussion earlier this year and other injuries. And I think they're playing so great. They have the championship pedigree. I don't know if they have quite enough to do it this year, but they're certainly, a force to be reckoned with, much more than they were earlier this year.
Right. And over at Bet Rivers, the Aces championship odds have shot up to T-3 behind the Lynx and Liberty at plus 700. What are your thoughts on the championship futures field right now?
And it's so hard because the regular season is a different animal, right? So you have to project some of this stuff. Maybe the Lynx are that good. I've laughed when I said, for whatever reason, I don't think they're going to win it all, but they are so connected on offense. And obviously, we saw that yesterday with Nafisa Collier returning. But again, that's against the Fever defense. They don't rebound that well. They obviously have a star in Collier, and they have good, like high-end good players in McBuckets and Courtney Williams, but the system is really the star when we're talking about splitting hairs. We haven't seen the Liberty at full strength yet. We will slowly but surely with Brianna Stewart expected to return. And then Mieselman, they have not played that front line. But I still think teams like the Mercury can make a run and make some noise, or maybe I'm just lying to myself. Maybe the Lynx are that good. They came within a whisker of winning it all last year, and I had them in the futures market. It's not like I've been anti. I was all about them a year ago. I just worry that they could be this sort of flame out like the Thunder were 2 years ago when they lost in the conference semis. But this team is battle tested much more, and maybe they're the Thunder of this year when they actually win it all. So I'm not betting against the Lynx. I'm just not running to bet on them. I don't think the Aces are worth the play. I don't think the Liberty are worth the play. They play no defense. You can handle them, and they haven't figured out, their sort of kinks, if you will, like Becky Hammond did. Maybe they're going to need to switch things up and bring, I don't know, Jonquel Jones off the bench or whoever it is. They're going to have to figure out how all those mouths get fed and stuff like that. The Lynx certainly the Lynx would love the playoffs to start right now. They look like a well-oiled machine.
100%. And I mean, with them, it always comes down to they have to prove that they have that blood in them, and they haven't yet. So I would like to see them prove us wrong, but there is valid reason to be a little skeptical of them. But I wanted to bring up, speaking of the Lynx, speaking of the Aces, Collier obviously returned and was business as usual against the Fever. 32 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. And her MVP odds shot up at Bet Rivers to minus 455 upon her return. But Wilson has scored at least 30 points in 4 of her last 5 games. She's got 19 double-doubles this season, and she's had all kinds of basketball in her to drag the Aces out of the trenches, and is somehow elevating her play right now as they're finding success. So do you think these odds are fair, and who do you think is going to win at the end of the day?
I think it's a 2-horse race, and I'm glad the Bet Rivers odds makers adjusted because I saw the market a little differently yesterday. I don't think Alyssa Thomas can win this at all. So she's done. 33-1, fine. Whatever. It needs to be a distant third. Asia is the best player in my eyes. I really think she is, but not by a landslide or anything like that. It's close. It's so close. And with Fee coming back and playing well and looked the part and reminded everyone she can do it on both ends of the court, much like Asia. I do think Fee's going to win. I don't think the actual MVP worth, whether you're talking to odds makers or pro bettors or whatnot, is the gap between minus 455 and plus 250 or whatever it is. However, the nature of voting and the voter fatigue of someone like Asia Wilson, who's won it 3 years, including last year. That's the key. She's the reigning MVP and won it unanimously. It's Fee's turn. And we've talked about this all last week. I said, as soon as Fee returns, this number is going to shoot up. And frankly, I think 455 is cheap. If you want to tie up your money for about a month, I think it's a layup at this point. And I do think Wes has brought up some great analysis. I didn't think of it until he brought it up, but just what she did in the offseason with Unrivaled, being an ambassador of the game, and that things along those lines, that might play a role, even if it's subconscious. It's playing a role. But the fact that she's the best player on the best team and worthy, and she's a defensive player of the year candidate. It's not like the MVP race in the NBA. I think of like 2018, where it was Kawhi, LeBron, and Harden. I wouldn't even have considered Harden because defense is 50% of this. All three of those, AT included, are outstanding defenders and have either won Defensive Player of the Year or finished runner up. So they're all worthy when you factor in both ends of the court. But I do think Fee's going to win. I think minus 455 is cheap. I just think all stars point to it. And it's just kind of the way that voting goes. As silly as that sounds, I just saw it coming a couple of weeks ago. It just finally clicked.
No, 100%. And I've said this on the show before. I vote for the NHL awards, and I can say, like, even if my own experience and talking to the rest of the voters, and you kind of do your homework. I mean, you'd hope you do your homework, but you are sometimes looking for cases against the favorite just to be like, oh, or like against a repeat as well. You're kind of looking at it all, and you're kind of looking at cases for the person as unfair as it can be. It's like if you had the idea that this person is going to be the person you're going to be paying attention to, front running. Sometimes you want, in your mind, it's a subconscious bias where you're like watching them thinking, all right, they are just as good or better than the rest of the field. So I'm going to kind of keep them in mind the most. Or it's, you don't want Connor McDavid to win again, for example. So you're like, all right, what are other people doing that I can make the case against McDavid for? And yeah, you can argue Wilson started out the gate and injured, and Fisa, she was injured for the month of August, but she comes back and now she's on a roll. So it's kind of a good situation for her to end with being able to play. It's not like she's rolling into the playoffs without having played at the end. So I think that factors into it. And of course, the unrivaled stuff and having like voter fatigue, and also the link situation with how good they are. And she's at the center of that with her defensive prowess. So I definitely think there's all of that to keep in mind when it comes to voter bias. And it's interesting betting on awards, because you have to, no matter what you think is actually the answer here, you have to keep voter bias in mind.
It's all part of it, right? There's a human element to this. And whether it's the humans actually playing the game or the humans voting on it, it's just part of, like we said, like we factor in rebounds, you're factoring in a person voting. And as you mentioned, there's subconscious bias, there's over the top bias. It's all part of the equation, but that's what also makes it so difficult for odds makers, because it's not as simple as modeling and projecting and doing the percentages of an outcome. You have to factor in the giant unknown. That's why drafts are so difficult, because you're factoring in the behavior of people, i.e., the control room or the draft room of a team, and you're factoring in the behavior of people in voting, right? A group of voters, and there's a herd mentality to a certain extent. There is just voter fatigue situation, like I mentioned. Overall, it just seems very, very unlikely that Fee would not win this thing. So, as I said, minus 455 is cheap technically.
I'm with you on that one. And now we are down to the wire here with just a few weeks left of the regular season. The playoff bubble is tightening up, which is some of the most interesting basketball we get in the WNBA, as just 1.5 games separate the Storm in sixth right now from the Sparks in ninth. The Fever have lost 6 of their last 8 games, and they dropped to number 8 seed, as the Valkyries are right in front of them now with a few strong performances, and the Sparks right behind them. What are your thoughts on the general playoff bubble right now?
It's going to be fascinating coming down to the wire. I have some futures on some win totals under the Fever and Liberty we've made on this show the last few weeks. But in terms of that last playoff spot, the Sparks play no defense. They play great offense. The Valkyries are everything that's right with the game of basketball. They play hard, they play smart, they cut, their team defense, they're well connected, they believe in each other, they make all the right moves, high efficiency, whether it be layups and threes. They're extremely well coached. I don't see a dumb challenge from Nakase like I do so many other coaches. They're just playing the right way, and it's a fun team to watch. But they are, limited with talent, especially after losing one of their best players, Thornton, for the year. about a month ago with a knee injury. So, but everything's done the right way, and they're just a fun watch. Now, the problem is, their remaining schedule's pretty tough, but they've answered the critics all year. I mean, this is a team that had a regular season win total of 8.5, and they're already at 19 wins with 7 games to go. So the no, they're heavily favored at minus 670 to get into the playoffs because they take care of business. Natalie Nakase and Golden State really rarely have a flat spot or one where they just mail it in. The first game they played at home without Thornton since the injury, they came back in the second half against the Wings and prevailed on a Friday night. Then they had an early tip Sunday in the East Coast in Connecticut, and that's the egg that they've laid. They lost by 30-something as a 6-point road favorite, and they got smoked. Aside from that, they've been very reliable, and like I said, they do everything the right way and play it the right way. So I'm rooting for them because I think it's a fantastic story in sports. But I wonder, will they get caught? I mean, the Fever and them are tied for the 7-8 seed, and the Sparks are a game back. I would be shocked if the Valkyries land in that 9th seed. So I'm not going to be laying the 670, but no need really to bet the plus 380 either.
I feel you on that. And it kind of is, I think to myself, well, if the Valkyries aren't going to do it, who is? Because you have the injuries with the Fever. I still think they're going to make the playoffs, but despite the injuries. But you look at the Sparks, and the defense is really tough. They are minus 139 to miss the playoffs and plus 104 to make it. So they're right on the line there. And I kind of want them to, because I think it's so fun, the run and gun game that they play. And I love Cam Brink back. But at the same time, I don't think they're going to step up. I don't think they're as good as the Valkyries right now, even despite the injury to their star players. So it's tough when you think about, like, all right, well, who is going to step up and be better than them?
It would be a great story, no doubt. And I think they're going to be a tough out if they get into the playoffs. It's more than just a nice story. You see teams struggling, and Valhalla, just that atmosphere. That atmosphere is a wonderful place to, watch a game on TV and stuff. It should be a really tough for opponents. If they're not in, it's going to be the Sparks.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, are they in over the Fever? Who gets that 8th seed? I'm not a believer in this Indiana team. They don't play any defense, although I was really pleasantly surprised with Aerial Powers yesterday, kind of fitting in nicely in her first game with Indy. There's a lot to like. It just depends when Caitlin Clark gets back, and when she gets back and they're seamlessly weaving her into the lineup, because she's such a ball dominant player. It's going to be really tough to just pick up where you left off when she hasn't played in a month and change. And that concerns me as well for the Fever. So they're not a guarantee. You see their money line to make the playoffs different than the Valkyries, because they have the Valks have the tiebreaker. So plus 240. We were talking 900 a few weeks ago was worth a flyer.
Right. And this is the time of year where kind of everything changes day by day. So if you want to get in on that now, you'd probably best be doing that, because it could change very soon. But I will say it is unpredictable there. And it is uninspired to me watching them play, knowing that they do have the injuries, but so do other teams like the Valkyries, and they are kind of making that work even despite it being their inaugural season. So you're right about, what is Stephanie White going to do to kind of maneuver this lineup? She's not exactly Becky Hammond in my eyes. So that could be interesting going forward. But guys, if you like what you hear on our shows, sign up for our newsletter. You get exclusive tips and tons of nuggets in the Insider magazine. It's all free, so I'm not sure what you're waiting for. Sign up free at bettingweeklystudios.com. And now we have finally arrived at tonight's 2-game slate. The Sun at the Liberty and the Aces at the Sky. Let's start with the Liberty, who have been in serious injury trouble that just keeps getting worse. They've lost 4 out of their last 5 games and have dropped from 2nd to the 5th seed in the process. So the reigning champs now risk losing home court advantage in the playoffs, and they're in a really tough spot. They've got Brianna Stewart, who is upgraded to at least questionable for tonight, but has been out with a knee injury. Sabrina Ionescu is now day-to-day with a foot injury. Natasha Cloud is day-to-day with a nose injury, and there are more depth injuries. First, I'll ask you, how do we approach betting on a game with so many injuries?
It's tough, Sarah. I just want to, I've said this time and time again, but it's worth repeating. Odds makers don't like it either, but they don't care too much because they're getting two-way action. It's the bettors who can only pick one side and sweat it out. So power ratings wise, odds makers prefer both teams. This is all sports, both teams at full strength. Let it rip. They know they have a true line. It's a clean math in their eyes, as clean as sports can be, much like a roulette wheel. But if you take away like 7, 8 numbers on a roulette wheel, then it's like everything changes. And that's what's going on with all these moving parts. Now, I think Sabrina's going to play, get back in the lineup. I do think Breanna Stewart's going to start. I don't know if she's on a minutes count. But Natasha Cloud, not expected to start. She wasn't at shoot around this morning. So there's a lot of moving parts. I know the Liberty are going to be more desperate and things like that. But it's the boy who cried wolf in a lot of ways. I mean, all year it's been like, oh, they're going to bounce back and all. And they just typically don't. I think this Sun team's been playing so well. One injury for the Sun, it bothers me, is Lacan is, I think, out. She's questionable. And she's a valuable piece because that also puts Sanaya Rivers, the rookie at NC State, off the bench. And she injects scoring with that second unit. Now she's going to start. So that bench unit is super thin. But I think the Sun just plays so hard. And this is a team that's around 500 ATS. So even though their overall record is terrible, it's misleading because Mabry missed so many games. These rookies are now so much better now. Morrow and Rivers are so much better now than they were earlier in the year. Lacan's been playing great, but I think she's going to miss tonight. I would take the 14.5. I'll make that my first and only play of the night, but I'll grab the Sun plus the 14.5. I think the Liberty do have the firepower, but A, that's a big number. But B, I think it might take some time to integrate everyone. Their defense is still not great.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my official play of the night too, because I think the Liberty need a morale win, but I don't think they need to win by 14.5. Like I think, and I don't think they can right now with all the question marks ahead. They don't need to, they can't. I also think it's kind of a mental game when it comes to, all right, you're disqualified from or like you're out of the playoffs at this point if you're the Sun. So now there's nothing left to lose. You might as well see what you have, and you don't have to play for like, not that teams are trying to tank, but you get my point, right? Where it's like, all right, we already are kind of established here, so we might as well see what we're made of. And there's teams, Albert always says this, and I love it, that like there are still veterans and there are a lot of players right now that are playing for a contract for next season with the upcoming CBA talks going on. So especially a Mabry, look at her. She is never not going to give it her all just for her own pride. So I kind of I'm with you on that one too.
Yeah, and they're not going to tank. They don't have their first round picks. They're going to lose their lottery pick via trade pick swap, I believe it is. But I just think they're playing so well. I really like their coach. He's from international ball. He's a good coach. They were just limited. Their hands were tied. They had a really tough start to the year, just given all the people they lost from last year. This franchise wasn't used to laying eggs like they did to start the year. But this is a team no one wants to play. They play hard. They play well. They got enough offense. If Tina Charles is clicking, and then Mabry off that, and some of the other pieces, this team is decent. So 14.5 just feels like way too many, even for even for facing a hungry Liberty squad.
I'm with you on that. I saw that and thought, all right, that seems a bit lopsided, and that's when I know I like to do a bet such as this. I'm like, all right, let's see what they got. And Tina Charles has been a vibe recently. I've loved what she said. People are asking her why she's so happy. She's like, I don't know. I'm 36 and I'm still playing. So that's the kind of end of the season
basketball.
vibe. Yeah.
We're love paid that. To play a kids game, just like you and I are paid to, talk sports. Life could be a lot worse.
Exactly. 100%. I love that attitude. And I guess we'll move on to the Aces in the Sky. It's Candace Parker's jersey retirement night in Chicago. Could this be the night the Aces snap their 10-game winning streak?
So the Sky, again, don't have their picks, so there's no tanking. Yeah. They're tempted. I think they're pretty decent. Remember, they just beat the Liberties 15-point dogs in New York. With Angel Reese back, this team has enough firepower. Off the bench, they bring in some scorers. They just do stall out a little bit. But Cardoso had a monster performance against the Liberty. I think there's going to be a time to bet against the Aces, and it could be tonight. I just don't think the number's quite high enough. For example, this is 10.5, the game we just talked about at 14.5. Aces on the road, Liberty at home in that game. Sky, I think the Sun are better than the Sky. They've proved that over the weekend. And so I'd rather lay 10.5 on the road at the Sky than lay 14.5 at home to the Sun, because I think the Sun are noticeably better than Chicago. the Sky have the capabilities to keep this within the number, but they also have the capability. They've really been a low scoring and bad second half team. So I think the Aces could pull away. That's what they did against the Mystics. And I lean to the Sky, but I just can't pull the trigger. Not enough is right for this matchup in play.
I am 100% in agreement with you on that one. I was eyeing Angel Reese double-double at -180 on Bet Rivers because Candace Parker has made some interesting. This is like a vibes-based bet, so I might lay off it, but I might do it kind of at the last second here. But it's not going to be an official play for me, but it's going to be something I'm thinking about because Candace Parker has made some interesting comments about Angel Reese. Just like I know Angel Reese is very competitive at heart, and she's just. Parker believes in her and wants to see a little more in her, but has not really. She has her podcast and hasn't really ranked her in the top of WNBA players, which Candace Parker is allowed to have her opinion, right? But it stings a little for Angel Reese, and I think you can kind of tell. So I kind of like the value there, double-double at -180. I know she's going to be on her game, and we'll see if there's any type of minutes restriction with her coming back from injuries and what have you, but I am eyeing that one.
Narratives matter. They are part of the equation. Recently, we've seen some narratives with Aaliyah Edwards being traded, and the Sun went into Washington and won, and we're all fired up to win one for her. More pronounced was Dewana Bonner for the Mercury back in Indiana when she was getting booed. She had a big performance. These narratives matter. We saw it in the NBA this past season when Klay Thompson went back to the Bay to face the Warriors for the first time. He was getting more shots up than he normally does. So Angel, to have sort of an edge to her, given how Candace Parker in her podcast with Aaliyah Boston ranked her in like the C category, and just it really wasn't anything to get bent out of shape about. But the defenders of Angel Reese will look for anything to feel slighted. But it was sort of, I just thought it was a brain cramp of an analyst on the fly doing some rankings and not this well thought out tactical demise of Angel Reese. But there are people who just badmouth her for no reason. So it's understandable they're a little defensive, those fans. But to get a double-double tonight, I think it's an okay bet. I think she'll get, and remember, this is also another reason why it's probably smart to bet on Chicago is Tyler Marsh, their head coach, got tossed in the second quarter in the last game, but not getting any whistle. So I think they're going to get a lot of whistles early. I would look to bet maybe the over. I think we're going to get free throws. Angel will go to the line a bunch. The Aces want to get up and down and run. So I would look at maybe a first quarter over, something like that, but no official play. But yeah, it's a little tricky when narratives get involved, but they are part of the equation, Sarah. So don't doubt your instincts on that.
Right. And I'm totally with you that was blown out of proportion, but kind of everything that's been the story of the past 2 seasons when it comes to Reese. So she's handled it well, though. She gets to control that a little bit, and I think maybe she will with a double-double tonight. But again, not an official play because it wasn't that big of a deal, and it shouldn't be something to get so bent out of shape and make Parker's night about her. She's not going to do that. But I think it could be something to eye just for the vibes. But to go on the record with our official plays tonight, you and I both have the Connecticut Sun covering the plus 14.5 spread.
Yeah, look, it's too many points for a team that's for a team against the Liberty that is still trying to figure things out. So the tough thing, and this more goes to that Chicago thing, I don't think they're going to win. So it's like the Aces is going to be a tight. So you're like looking at a margin between 5 and 15. So the 10.5. I think with 14.5, you got a lot to play with, a little extra ump. And I hate that Lacan's probably going to miss this game, but I do think the Sky are playing much better of late.
100%. All right, guys, we'll check it back in tomorrow. Thanks, Doug, for joining me. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode and we can grow this thing together. And of course, it's US Open season, so stay tuned for Betting Weekly, Game Bet Match, and Betting Weekly WTA episodes throughout this US Open. Let's keep this momentum going all around, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.